Hello, everybody, and welcome to Panel Day. The week of guest host has come to an end. It's Friday. I've taken back the helm, and it was a great week, honestly. Brian, actually, who's that way? No, that way. There we go. There we go. He was on. He started it off, and it's fitting that he's ending it. We're actually talking about the perils of hosting, and Brian's going to introduce himself to you, And when he's done, I'm actually going to introduce myself with a video package. I got fancy watching Brian K. Morris, and now I'm doing video packages too.
Dang.
Right?
Oh man, I'm ready. I'm ready. Hi everyone. I'm Brian K. Morris of Rising Tide Publications. We do comic books and novels, mostly heroic fantasy types. I'm also can be found on the Facebook page for Rising Tide Publications. Also, currently during the this thing that's making all the news right now, I'm on every morning at 10 a.m. Eastern with Nevermind the Furthermore, a daily talk show. Hence my presence here, I suspect. And also on Tuesday nights, we do one called Clever Title Pending, where we talk about creativity and the business behind it. And Rob, thank you so much for having me here.
You're welcome, my friend. And I'm going to introduce myself by actually using a video package. I'm going to do this thing of promoting myself for once. How cool is that? I actually figured out I could do that by just clicking a button.
An all-ages tale that teaches morals with farts and shows the power of imagination that will entertain everyone in your family, including the parents reading the book. Thank you for hitting play and allowing us to introduce you to Cat Dad and Supermom, the award-winning Farts with Morals storytelling awesome adventure that people seem to love. And we could keep going that way. We could use words that could try to get you to be excited and convinced to buy it, but I'd rather just be honest with you. I'd rather be humble with you and tell you why I created the story. You see that little boy over my shoulder, right over there, and the other side, the Supermom, and the big elephant that farts? All of that is based on my boy. He's a special needs 5-year-old who I love with all my heart, and he has made me a better man and has taught me what unconditional love is. So if this story is about him, the standard had to be higher. That's why I got one of the best artists in the world in Raheel Mohsin. I got Chuck Pinault, who has done such great work as an editor and as a writer himself, to be part of this. Both of them became co-creators because of how much passion went into this. It was about passion for creating a top-notch story that was meant to entertain your entire family, and I think we did that. The rest, they're all keywords. They're all ways to convince you to do it. Truthfully, this is a story that matters to me, and it had to be one of the best stories that I wanted to share with you. It advocates for people who get bullied, and it advocates for the right things to do when you see someone get bullied. It advocates for being a better human being, but it also represents my son. And because of that standard, because of the fact that my son is in this book, it had to be one of the best things I could create, probably in my entire career. Anytime my son is attached to something, it is that high of a standard for me. So if you're looking for a reason to back this Kickstarter, it's because, well, as I love my son, and I wouldn't put anything out with his name on it that wasn't amazing. Thank you for watching, sharing, and backing Cat Dad and Supermom, and Ella Fart never forgets.
I love at the end of that, you can actually hear Jax running around in the background. That was unintentional and just perfectly timed.
Oh, that was great. I love that video, and I would like to publicly congratulate you, Rob, for making your initial goal on your Kickstarter as we are recording this, and also coming very close to your next stretch goal level, I believe, $500, right?
Yep, and we announced a cover, and we've had such good fan art coming to us from some great artists. I'm really thrilled about everything about that. But we're here to talk about hosting.
Yes.
So part of hosting is the intros. Now, a lot of times I don't even do an intro because I'm crowdfunding. I'm going to do one on. I actually will record one to introduce myself, and I'll have it like this, and because there's going to be a time where these banners are going to be finally down. They're going to be in the garage because I'll be traveling with them. And I'm not going to want to dig them out every time I do a show once a week. Right now, like Brian said, we're pretty much on not 24 hours, but 7 days a week for certain, and we're on for a good amount of time. This weekend's a weekend where I don't have anything scheduled as far as virtual cons. And some of the hosting tips we're going to be going over today is actually me watching other people do hosting now that there's all this time out. There's guys like you, Varian, Randy, of course, through Indie Vault, who do this constantly. And this has just been a different time period for us to do what we've always done. And then you mix in the new breed. And this show is not to attack the new breed. It is to help you guys and give you the hints, the things that we wish someone had done a video for. We'll spend the first half an hour or about 20 minutes now because we spend a lot of time introducing ourselves because we're just ballers. That's what ballers do.
Oh, yeah.
We got 20 minutes talking to ourselves. And then we have a special guest who, from the guest point of view, will talk to us as hosts and ask us questions that he sees fit and gives opinions from the guest side of the room, which will lead into Monday's conversation where we give advice on how to be a guest based on being hosts. And Brian will be with me for that. So I have a few topics. And one of the first things I want to say, if you're doing a show, and Brian knows this, understand what your show is. Have a mission statement, know what it's going to do, and know how you're going to do it. When I sit down for these shows, I always have a list of questions because this is a panel for us. This is part of the OnCon network. We're using our backdrop behind us, or I guess it should be that way. On the screen right there, it says indieadvocates.com, and it says Rising Tide, Chuck's Raw Reviews, Indie Vault. This is all part of that setup because today we're talking about people who host things. The only reason Chuck's not with us is because he technically doesn't host anyone as far as interviews, and this is based more on the interview aspect of it. But he does great work with that, and we're hoping to get Varian or Randy in the chat in the discussion a little later. Both of them are still working on other projects, so especially Randy. So sometimes time is sparse during this time period, and I understand that. We hope to have them. If we can't, we'll get through this. So, oh wait, I was just talking about Randy, and here comes Randy now, perfectly timed.
There I am. Where's Varian's not here, huh?
Not yet, anyway. And we are live, just so you know.
Okay. Thanks for that warning.
Yep. I always like Varian. Varian never got back to me. I know he's around, but sometimes he doesn't get back to messengers during the day.
Yeah, sometimes.
We're in the middle of talking about the importance of being a host, and we were just saying that you guys are one of the few people who were hosting before this started and haven't missed a beat. While we have this new influx of people that just are problematic with the way that they're handling it, so we want to give them some advice on how to better host their shows.
Okay.
All right. You want to introduce yourself? You missed the introduction round.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm running late. I was in the middle of doing some work here in front of the board, but
and I said that too.
So what?
I said Randy's busy working. He'll be here in a few minutes.
Hello, everybody. I'm Randy Zimmerman. I am an independent comics creator, publisher, everythinger. I've been doing this for many decades. Arrow Comics, Weeby Comics, and Massive Comics are all banners that I've had in the past. I've freelanced for just about every, well, not just about every, but for a lot of the independent comic companies out there doing every job that I possibly could, from editing to consulting to lettering to penciling or inking, whatever I could do when I had the time, because I love this market so much. And right now I'm a award-winning commercial and graphic artist, and a lot of my work centers around doing sequential art for advertising and other purposes because it pays really good. So other than that, I'm part of the Indie Vault podcast that Varian and I do every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. and Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Now, Randy and Brian, either one of you can take this first. How important is it to pick and kind of almost make sure you put guests through a strainer before you let them on live air to understand them and do the research? Because having the wrong guest can derail your show. And I know Randy's had some run-ins.
We've had a few derailings. But go ahead, Brian.
Well, fortunately, I haven't had too many guests. At one point when I got my iPad, see, right now when everyone's looking at me, I'm doing this through my laptop. No, you don't need fancy equipment. But I did it through my iPad, which only is portrait as opposed to the widescreen look I prefer. And it has that thing where if people have the up-to-date Facebook app, which is where I broadcast usually, they can be on the air with you. Not everyone is... I should get these people Monday show about how to be a good guest, because it's like, you interview me. So, hi, here's so and so. How are you today?
Yeah.
You know, you know, don't mess with the Eagles if you don't know how to fly. So I got away from it for a long time, and now I've started going back into it, especially right now when I feel there's a whole lot of people who have a message that needs to be heard in the creative fields, and they've got some things they've got to impart to people. And I have a journalism background. That my associate degree in journalism is finally paying off, and so I like interviewing people. And finding out, you know, more about them, how they do what they do, the nuts and bolts. And so now I am a lot more comfortable with a 2-screen setup. You know, now that Rob, thank you, Rob, has taught me about StreamYard,
Yeah.
which is fairly simple, almost intuitive, as opposed to OBS, which is the system I use for my regular shows, which vexes me greatly still. So there's a learning curve, and I'm still it's still blotting out the sun for me. But anyway, I'm a lot more comfortable now. But yes, I vet my guests to make sure that they have something to say and they are at least reasonably articulate. And so far, so good.
Now, I will say credit to Randy as I pass it to him. Randy and Varian are the reasons I use StreamYard. They're the ones who got me hip to it, as it were.
Thank you, Randy.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're welcome. But it's not me. It's all Varian. Varian was the one that got a hold of me and said, "Hey, why don't we start doing a podcast?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. You know, why not?" But that's because I really wanted to start getting back into it. There's a lot about comics that I want to talk about because I've seen a lot. And Varian's really the one that goes through and vents the guests for the show. And sometimes I think he finds, I don't know where he finds them. Sometimes when he runs across them and he puts them on, I think he does it on purpose because they're the deer in the headlights look, or they have bad equipment or whatever. It just adds to the flavor and the transparency of the show.
Well, I also think you're the strainer of the show, because if he throws a bad guest at you, you're there to kind of be like, no, get an education. No, you have to understand the media.
Don't get me wrong. I've only done that a couple times. It's just people that want to willingly not learn drive me nuts. That's
yeah.
all. So I go, hey, dude, come on, just watch the channel, get an education, get something. I'm not afraid to tell somebody that when they, but that's my personality. Some people just drive me up the wall when they refuse to look. You know, there are none so blind as those who will not see.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest skills of being a host has to be getting the people out of the weeds when they go off on these long tangents that no longer have to do with the show. You've gotten beyond derailing.
Yeah, I think Varian's really good at that.
Yeah.
He's able to steer people back on and keep some people on topic, because we do have a few guests that really love to wander. And I'll do it myself every once in a while. You get me on a soapbox, I can go for an hour. Just talking about one subject or another, and just I can take over the whole show.
But you guys both host in real life panels too, and that's also in part the panel control. The moderator is making sure everyone on your panel gets the proper amount of time, which leads us to the next question, because they're kind of combined. And Brian, you can start this one. Not only do you have to keep them out of the weeds, but you have to keep your time going. And during a panel, it's even worse. A lot of times we don't have a phone in our hand. We're trying to pay attention to the audience and read the crowd, but you got to know when someone's talking too much. I will cut people off, and I've seen Randy do it too. And Randy's will say that's not the topic. That's not what we were talking about. Let's go back. Let's track back to what we were saying. How do you handle that at your panels? Because I know you have a lot of cosplayers, and God bless you for that.
I've learned, because I used to work in television too. So when PBS pledge breaks are the best training for on-air hosts, because you've got to learn to read the crowd, you've got to learn to watch the technical stuff, and you've got to just basically keep all the plates spinning in the air. And I'll do that. I will, like you guys, I will cut a person off if, they take a breath. I say, well, thank you for that answer. Hey, let's move to our next person now. And Yeah, I'm usually the person, like Randy, or I'm the one who's usually gets his button pushed, and then it's 20 minutes into what gripes my butt.
Yeah.
But I'm usually pretty mindful even of my own talk, and especially when I am leading the conversation in a convention panel, I'm the one who says the least if I can do it right. That I want the people on my panel, just like I want the guests on my show, to have the spotlight because they're going to be gone later on.
Right.
But I'm still going to be there next time. So I think I would much rather see them take the spotlight and just bask in it for a minute. I'm kind of like Bob Newhart was with his guests, his regulars on his old TV show. It was Larry, Daryl, and Daryl. It was Pete. It was everyone else, but almost him at times. And that's the kind of model that I try to use when I'm doing a panel at a show, or whether I'm on my show trying to conduct an interview.
Right.
What about you, Randy? As far as keeping the time, because I know there are times where I've watched, because I watch your show as a fan, and I enjoy what you guys are saying, but I've seen you get to the point where you've been frustrated. Have you yanked someone's mic? Have you done the
No, I have never done it personally, but I have almost done it a couple of times. If they don't get the hint, or if they're just really being overbearing, a lot of times that's what the private chat is for. I'll private chat over to Varian and go, "Hey, this just became the so and so show." Maybe it's time to cool this guy off, or why in the world did you send this guy a link when we're trying to talk, because that guy is going to take us way over here.
Varian did comment. We got the message from the boss. He said, "I'd be on this panel, but my back hurts from carrying Indie Vault Live on my back." Oh, wow.
Oh, he's funny.
Oh, poor man.
Geez, at the time, I'll let you guys fight.
No,
Varian does a lot. He's probably busy trying to make his computer work. That's why he's not. Why he's not here.
And
it's really hard to get that hand crank working fast enough in order to get up here without having to stop every 5 seconds or freeze up. So.
Yeah, and I was even talking. You weren't with us, Randy, because you were still working. But before we went live, I said when I was thinking about the hosts that I wanted on the show, it was a short list. Because I don't think there are a lot of hosts that respect not only and this is it. Yes, you're supposed to. You're my guest, so I'm supposed to do things to help promote you, make you look good. But remember, the people I'm on air for, the audience, not you guys. Mm-hmm. I'm here to entertain my audience and keep things convenient for them. I don't want anyone taking over any show and spouting anything that I don't want my audience to be, hit with. So how do you guys deal with that when topics? Because I know sometimes, especially on your shows, topics can get a little off the rail and get a little into dangerous territory. And Brian has the ability to not read the comment. You guys have people talking and spouting some stuff where it's like, wait, what did they just say? Like, you almost wish live video came with like a rewind button because you can't believe they just said that.
Yes.
I'm taking notes. This is gold.
Absolutely right.
But like, how do you deal with that? Like, as a person, because sometimes Varian drops out, or you're there on your own. How do you like?
Well, we have a couple of buttons on the side on the StreamYard. One of them is a stop sign that says "Whoa" on it.
Oh yeah.
We start flashing that on the screen, or we'll say "Whoa, whoa, whoa! You didn't really mean to say that, did you?" And when they double down on it, then we try to switch the subject as fast as possible, and then get them off the air. Yeah, we've had a lot of guests on that have only been on once, and we've had a lot of guests on that aren't on anymore. But we do have we've made a lot of friends, and it just amazes me with StreamYard and the internet, the reach, how many different people that you can reach out to, and really unique individuals. You get Carla, whose last name I can't remember, who's got a really thick really thick accent, but does incredible work. Who loves talking about the book that she does, Grim Reaper, I believe it is. It's on Indiegogo, I think, right now, and talks about her husband. And there's always going to be, there's so many different people, so many different personalities. There's always going to be something unique about anybody that comes on that you'll be able to pull out. And again, you really have to watch them if you haven't completely vetted them, which Varian has a big tendency not to do. That they'll suddenly just go off the rails, and all of a sudden we're talking about something that, we also have a TVMA DLSV warning box up in the corner, and the conversation has gone overly adult quite a few times, where we try to steer it back to comics.
Varian says, Randy, you're right. He's having big computer problems today. Big problems today. So yeah, Randy nailed it. And
he's building his own. He's building his own system up, and he'll be right as rain here in a day or so, hopefully, if he can get everything to work right. And just be careful when you plug in that power supply, buddy. You don't plug it in reverse, so you'll have to go out and buy another one.
He's building a Terminator, not a computer, from what the power source he has.
Telling you what? A Terminator? Yeah.
Yeah, because he's got a serious one.
That could be.
I will say that vetting the people on your shows, I have not had people on my shows and turned them down, especially when I see them on your show at first. Like whenever I see a name, it's on your
ridiculous.
show.
I gotta have him on.
I get them. Like I'll be like, "Hey, did you hear about Indie Vault? You guys should go check that show out. They'll probably have you on." I'm sitting there watching, taking notes. Nope, they're not coming on my show. Do you guys like have a process, or is it just, hey, who can we get this week? Because I tell people no often, actually.
I think it's Varian, and if he thinks they're going to be a problem, he has them on.
Varian, is that true? I know you're watching. Fess up, Varian. Fess up. What about you, Brian? Do you avoid the problematic guests? Because I'll invite them on, but I tell them the kid gloves are off. And that reminds me, we do have a public service announcement that we want to bring up before the show continues. If you guys have seen this man, we are still looking for Marcel Dupree, who ran so quickly away from an interview where he was going to answer some hard questions. We're afraid for his safety. We think he might have Epsteined himself. So please reach out to us and tell us it's okay. We don't want anything to happen to our friend Marcel.
We don't wish him any harm. We just wish he would resurface.
Yeah, so we could talk to him like friends and ask him all the questions that another interviewer said that he couldn't ask him because he was too busy being a journalist.
Huh?
Yeah.
What?
It was a train wreck. One of the hosts had an interview with him, and not a bad guy. But he kept saying during the interview, "I'm just being a journalist," but kept answering for Marcel and giving him the out. And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. You watched it with me?
I was going to say there are a few other guests, too, that I would love to have on that Varian kind of knows better.
So, oh, yeah?
Yeah, at least for a few months, yeah.
You want to have him on to beat him up, though?
Not physically.
No, but on the show, you want to ask those questions.
I would like to. There are a few people I wouldn't mind asking a few questions, yeah, but, I'll wait for a little bit.
Fair enough. What about you, Brian? How do you cycle out the hate?
Well, excuse me. We talked about a little in the pre-show, Rob and I, about people who think that even though it's my name on all the PR, that they think it's their show. And I've learned, since I read virtually every comment that comes across my screen, I've learned to kind of read ahead a little by a couple words. And if I see something that could be a red flag, I will stop and take the whole message in. And yeah, that guy. Thanks, Rob. 10 a.m. every day, promote often. Anyway, I had some people that just come on and it's like they're like a kid in a candy store. They just think it's all theirs, and I'm there to drop a little cold water on them. That I do insist on having control, but I think it's more a personality flaw than anything. But mostly I like Randy said, like you guys both said, it's for the people watching more than anything. I don't want people tuning in, and it's not that I think they need to hear me so much, but I don't want anybody to basically suck the oxygen out of the room either. And that's my job to make sure it doesn't happen.
I kind of got into this because I was doing a few other outside podcasts, and everybody told me, you should really do a podcast. You know a lot of stuff. And I'm like, I don't know. I've just been around for a while. That's all.
Yeah.
So and then Varian decided to start it up. So that's the way it went. You know.
Yeah, and mine initially was going to be 5 minutes of promotion, telling everybody how wonderful I am, because I do write fiction. I am I am a professional liar. But after about 5 minutes, I saw the comments scrolling across the screen. I decided to say hello to everybody, and suddenly they're answering back and asking questions, and I realized we're having a conversation here, and that's a bazillion times more interesting than me just telling you again what I've got for sale, where I'm going to be, what I'm having for breakfast, sort of thing. It brings the focus in on people who might not otherwise have a voice. And I think the purpose of my show is to give them that voice, give them at least a minute out in the open. And a lot of people have made friendships just through my show, which is incredible. I think it's an incredible feeling. And people have actually found creative work through this. So it's like, yay.
Yeah.
This might actually be very. Last question I have before we go to the other guest we have, who's going to be asking us as a guest of shows things about hosting and doing it. And I know, Randy, if you have to run out at any point, so I know you're busy, feel free. Well,
I would have been here on time if I had been watching the clock.
Oh, okay. I had one participant who turned to my show into her own craft pyramid scheme recruiting channel. I stomped right on that. I got to find out who made that comment. So I want to know more about that story. But what advice would you give to all the people who are now out there trying for the first time to do these streams and kind of tripping over themselves? Because I think that's important. My advice to you guys is watch other people's shows that you admire and actually try to do what they're doing. Don't try to reinvent yourself right away and be different or be zany or be funny. Try to get the basics down first before you do something that no one's going to want to watch. That's my advice to you guys. We'll go with Brian. Brian, go ahead.
Okay. I think the first thing you need to do if you're going to do a show on Facebook, YouTube, wherever, give yourself permission to be awful. You're going to stink when you start out. You might as well embrace it, but then go back, look at what you've done, figure out your weak points. And also, if you see somebody whose show you like, for whatever reason, maybe they've got what looks to be a better technical setup, or they're doing things like a split screen like this, don't be afraid to reach out and say, hey, I'm looking to do a show like yours. How do you do what you do? Because I have no problem sharing what little I know about this, because I've spent about 4 years trying to make it up as I go. So it's just, and basically be open to learn. And don't worry about being bad, because I've been at this for 4 years and I still don't have it right, but people find it amusing. So I must be doing something correctly.
And Randy?
I knew I had a problem with public speaking. The first interview I ever did, it was for a show called the Anti-Gravity Room that was on Sci-Fi Channel. And I went back and watched that, and every other word was So I knew I had to get some public speaking. There's an I had to do some public speaking experience. So at my first opportunity to start teaching, I started teaching. And I love doing it. Especially, I teach simple cartooning, nothing real serious. Very rarely do I even get into sequential art or graphic storytelling in any way. Just basic circles, lines, and hey, look, here's pretty much the stuff that I do on the Zim Geek channel that I have here on YouTube. But I love doing it, and it really helped me in my public speaking. So that now whenever I'm here, plus I'm in my basement, so I'm just looking at a red light, or I'm looking at my screen at everybody else while I'm talking, and I don't think about how many thousands of people that we're reaching out or that we're talking to at the moment, except for every once in a while when I ask Varian what our radio numbers are, because we're also broadcast on Indie Volt Radio, and we go all over the world, and we get some crazy people from some crazy places. That and it's just awesome to know, we're talking to 12,000 people, and a lot of them are in Portugal, and we just love all of that. So it's a lot of fun to do.
I will say, if you ever listen to you yourselves on radio or your video later, it really teaches you a lot. Like Randy said, the ums. I didn't realize how often I did ums until I had a radio program and I had to cut the ums out. And I had to go back in and edit it, and it taught me very quickly never to say again unless I wasn't being recorded.
Well, it's a lack of confidence and a thinking. Now I'm just quiet instead of saying I'll smack my lips. I'll be quiet for a second while I'm organizing my thoughts. So it's a lot easier and it's a lot more friendlier to hear, other than all the time. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read somewhere that that's why William Shatner's famous pauses are the way they are, because he, like you, and like I still do, I still have to watch myself about the because I'm trying to not say every other word.
That's also a real easy hook, yeah.
It is, and once you get into it and once you're aware of it and you're on the air, suddenly you can't stop doing it. But I read somewhere that William Shatner, his pauses are because he used to do and all the time, and so he realized that he need to formulate his next thought, so he just stops talking, which is something I need to learn to do every now and then.
Also, there's the like that time where they did this thing that was
There's a lot of different phrases that you can get trapped into.
Yeah.
If you're not careful, yeah.
And speaking of getting trapped into, our next guest will introduce themselves. Josh has been brought in to ask us the questions because he's been a guest on your show, Randy, and other shows. He's been on panels. He's someone who gets to sit on the other side of a host and probably hate us for doing things wrong. So now he gets the opportunity to point a finger and be like, why do you fuckers do this? So Josh, tell him who you are and start asking away. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I had myself muted just in case. I was like, just in case. I wasn't sure. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Josh C. Lyman. I have been in the comic book and art industry for the last, I'd say, 15 to 16 years, and professionally in the comic books for the last 10 years. I've worked for numerous things. I can rant, but short version, like Randy, I mostly work freelance. I have recently started jumping back into podcasts as a way to, kind of get myself back out there a little bit more from just going to Comic Cons, but at the same time, being able to, reach a different audience and just get to know some more people a little bit more intimately. And I have been hiding in the background listening for the last few minutes here, and I have my list of questions.
And is that the time? Gotta go, guys. See ya.
Yeah, see you later.
Look.
Yeah.
As a swerve, I told you this week was guest host, so I actually brought up Josh to be that guest host for the second part of this hour. So go ahead, Josh. It's your show now.
Oh, well, thank you. All right. Well, guys, I've been listening quite a bit to what you guys have been talking, and it's very, very enjoyable to hear. At the same time, just the back and forth, the discourses on personal opinion versus like, hey, this is what works and this is what I do. With case in point, here we go. Brian actually covered something a little bit earlier I'd like to touch a little bit more on. He mentioned before that he had some experience with public access television as far as that's concerned, and how it leads into being a better presenter. And so my question is that with the advance of classic television and modern media and things like that, with YouTube and the daily podcasts, with iTunes and Google Play, so on and so forth, what are the things that you guys as hosts take away from that? Randy had mentioned before that he was like, hey, we got the radio, we reach a lot of international topics and audiences. What are the things that you hold on to that you really want to have in every one of your shows?
That was for you, Brian.
Oh, thanks.
Right,
Well, that's for Brian. Well,
Sure,
that's for all of you, actually.
Well, I'll take it.
Brian and Randy as an aside. Rod, anyways, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'll take it gladly, Josh. Thank you. I think the one thing that I always want to keep in mind is the format of my show. And the idea that I am not necessarily there for me, that I am there to bring out people and let them have a moment in the sun, let them be able to vent themselves, vent their opinions, and keep me to a minimum. I keep describing myself not so much as a host, as a facilitator. Mm-hmm. That I'm the guy pushing the buttons on OBS and making sure everything goes right, hopefully. and eventually we'll have a show out of it, which I think makes it what I do fairly unique. It's not very polished, really. It's just a little slicker a lot slicker actually than when I first started, because my earliest episodes were just incredibly cringe-inducing. So I think as long as I stick to my format and remember that I am the facilitator and not the star, that things are going to be all right.
That's a good way to look at it. Rob, how do you tend to pull things from modern media?
Like anyone else. Anytime someone's doing an interview, I'm watching how they do an interview on every aspect. Other comic creators, CNN, Fox News, what are they doing? You know who I really like, I really admire? John Oliver. I think he does a great job. I think he's a great host, and I kind of watch to see how he does things. So I like to have a sense of humor. I like things not to be too stuffy. But I also watch like an Anderson Cooper. Not saying these are great sources. I'm not backing anyone up. But Anderson Cooper, he's a polished professional. And you got to give him that credit. Forget about the politics for a minute. Just his mannerisms, how performed and relaxed he is, and how he knows how to control the camera. I kind of look at that, and then I go watch myself and see how disgusting I am compared to it. And I take notes, and I start to tell myself, well, these are the things you need to improve. And, we all have that thing, well, I'm doing this for free. I shouldn't have to do it. And the minute I hear myself whining about that, I curse at myself and say, then don't fucking do it, you baby. Either do it right or don't do it. That's the standard, because you have people who are tuning in more and more every week. They deserve your best. If you can't give them your best, stop doing this today. And when I do that, I don't like being told what to do. So I'm like, fuck you. I'll do it better than you expect. So it's kind of like a lot of back and forth, but a lot of research, looking what other people are doing and staying in the loop. I won't be standing anytime soon. I don't care what the news programs do. I'm not going to be standing, but I will notice what they do. I try to train my eyes up there a little bit more often. But also when I'm looking this way, especially on a panel, it looks like I'm looking at you guys, which it really is, because I'm looking at you as we're talking. So these are things I all started to pay attention to. So believe it or not, I do a lot of research and watch limited TV, but the right TV for the right interviewers. Like I would not watch Trump for how to act on a podium unless it was a joke, because he's not great as a speaker on the press conferences, but he's great on SNL. I'll say that. When he shows up on an SNL, he's great. But that doesn't mean what he does. He's someone that I watch on Twitter and social media because he's someone who knows how to control it. There's a human being who has understood social media as far more than he's given credit for. He knows how to do everything and get everyone to jump and move the right way. So he is someone to watch on that regard. So that's me, watching everyone and trying to take what I like and make it my own.
It's a good way to look at it. Taking elements from comedy and news comedy and blending that into some more realism, and how do you engage at the same time be entertaining? It's a good way to do it. I mean, it's the same as hand talking, like right now. Randy, what about you? What would you say your influence is?
With your gestures.
Yeah, right.
That's good. Though it is kind of fun to watch some speakers that do that.
What's going on?
Exactly, that happens way too often. But I just like to talk. That's all. And once you get enough confidence and you get around the equipment enough, it's just like holding a regular conversation.
That's a good way to look at it.
That's what I try to do.
Well, Rob actually led into something that I did want to actually address, because it's a little bit of a trickier question, and you guys can feel free to who wants to take it on first. But how much or how often does personal opinion and viewpoint and your own ideology affect your content? As far as like, hey, what triggers do you find that you personally choose certain topics because this is what brings your fan base in? Or if it's just something that's really bothering you for the day or the week or the month? If that's something you're going to focus on until you have that resolution or conflict resolved in your own mind.
Yeah. I'll start so you guys can think about it for a few minutes.
Like I said, that's a tough question.
It's a good question. It's a good question.
But for me, it's a very simple thing. I do what I want to do based on the need of the show. So if we're doing a panel, there's a topic, yes. If I want to do a round table to bitch about the Rise of Skywalker or how much I like the Rise of Skywalker, because I did a round table for that, where the round tables are pretty much gloves off. Everyone can be themselves. I do the hot tag into Indie Vault when I'm brought in to ask questions, and I kind of play up the devil character, and I have the fetish agenda, and I'm a lot more smartass. So it's my circumstances and my surroundings. Are they expecting Kickstarter pause? Again, That's about trying to help people, educate them. There's not a lot of sense of humor. There's more to the point, technical stuff. That's more of a director side of me. So I think it's really the arena I'm playing in at that moment. Because if I'm on a show with the guests, I don't bring up my politics. So that's not fair to my guests. They open a door, I might jump in that door and maybe call them out on something, but I try to avoid it, and I try not to make it about me, because as a good host, I'm trying to make it about them. How can I cultivate it? And we had Monty on today, who's got a great Kickstarter, Loco Hero. She's this sexy woman, and I brought it up right away. Is this just a tit-and-ass comic book? That was one of my first questions to him. But before we went on, I made sure he knew I was going to ask it, because there's nothing like hitting your guests the wrong way to start an interview. And you sometimes do have to have that pre-show. Listen, we're going to talk about this. This is going to be a conversation. I believe in you. I believe you can steer it where it needs to be steered. I'm not going to tell you how to answer it, but this is our first question out of the gate after introduction. Are you ready for it? And then, of course, the way I word it, when you hear it, I word it on purpose to be like, and now it's your turn, hit back. Because this is every
age-old expression of ambush interview.
Yeah.
Ambush.
And this is what people are saying about you. This is your moment. Talk to them. Be angry and set them straight. So for me, it's always, what am I doing? What is the purpose of the video? If I'm just getting on a video to tell people to fuck off, then yeah, that's all about me. It's going to be a fuck you video. I create underground comics. Fuck everybody. But if it's an interview with Brian K. Morris, I probably won't curse, because he doesn't curse on his thing. So it's knowing your area, knowing who you're having that debate with. And you see that with other polished individuals. You'll have, like, when people go to John Oliver's show, they're suddenly cursing. Meanwhile, they have a network television show that they never curse on. So
you don't bring Eminem onto the Elmo show.
Didn't they? You're kidding, but I think they actually did.
I think they did, yes.
I agree. Yeah, I think
as
so.
An aside, just briefly, HBO is bringing back the Elmo late night talk show.
Uh-oh.
So they're going to be bringing guests on there, like John Mulaney, who I personally don't believe should be anywhere near a puppet. But that's, again, my own personal viewpoints. Ryan and Randy.
Is Elmo going to talk about who tickled him wrong?
Elmo's going to talk about his bedtime's at 7, so it's not so late.
Those are his
I'm
lines,
sure part of the
apparently.
charm of that show will be Elmo's innocence.
It will be.
Before Epstein, after Epstein, two different Elmos. All right. How do you decide how you act? Probably better than me.
And he jumps.
Yeah.
I think he said Randy. But
Yeah, I
It's all
heard
good.
Randy. I heard Randy.
What? Me? What?
Yeah, you.
I like
I'll
this. We'll
follow
go
you.
counterclockwise.
I'll
This will
let
work out
Varian
well this
decide
way.
the guess, and 9 times out of 10, he, if he knows that I'm going to get triggered, he brings them on as quickly as possible. So,
He's just like, oh man, I need
just
this.
the way it works. Yeah. Varian is not. I think he finds it a hobby of his to poke the bear. So, and he'll do it as often as possible. But I think we've had some really good discussions on the show. I think we've had some really good educational points on the show, and we just all love comics. So that gives us all a common ground. I try not to talk about my politics. I especially try not to talk about my religious beliefs, because, quite frankly, we're talking about comics. Nobody needs to hear that. So. You know, it's the way it is. I just want to be out there and entertain and give people some escape for a couple hours instead of having them go, well, that guy's crazy. I need to talk to him. What the heck? We have enough of that coming on. All we have to do is have the wrong guest on, and Varian's bombarded by messages. What are you having that person on for? Oh, you know.
I said sorry,
They're in
Randy.
comics. It's all right. That wasn't necessarily aimed at you.
But I know you have an email every time I'm on.
I would argue that in that case, it's one of those things where, it's the age-old adage of everybody's got one. You can imply as you like. I use nose just because, hey, they're all different shapes and sizes, and they all smell something wrong at some point, and that's going to be your own olfactory senses. So it's a little more logical version of the expression, but it really boils down to that. It's like, look, what you choose to put up there is not only your image of who you are being represented in media capacity via radio or live stream or on television or anything like that, but it's also going to impact your viewers and hopefully if you're trying to give off opinions, then that's going to be something for that. Brian, what about you, Maestro?
Well, on my shows, we are fairly, we are totally apolitical. We hate everyone. Whether they're in office or not, they're all jerks. But as far as religion, I don't make it a secret that I have faith, but we don't dwell on it. Although one of the recent, I think, best shows we had on my channels was with Josh Stone, where he discussed his faith, because that's his day job, and we got quite a bit of good, respectful conversation out of it, including a friend of mine, Sarah, who is a pagan.
Apologize for interrupting. Luke Stone or Josh Stone?
Luke.
Okay, sorry. Just for clarification, I apologize.
This one.
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay.
Absolutely. Just apologies. Yeah, and that's one of those great segues. Go ahead. Sorry, I just was
no, that's fine. No.
I'm like, is there another one?
Yeah, no. That's useful to know. There we go. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Mr. Subtitles. But no, I do occasionally. It's been mentioned. Like Randy said, talked about his triggers. I occasionally get a few, because being in the publishing field, I am very passionate about self-publishing. And being published by others, that's fine for some people, and I don't begrudge anyone, because I am also published by other people, both comics and in prose. But the thing is, there are predators out there that will take advantage of people who do not know any better, and say, for like 4 figures, 5 figures, I will make sure your comic is out there. I'll get it in Diamond, or you write a novel, I'll make sure it outsells Stephen King. The BS artists in any of our businesses, that is my hot button, and you can bet that I'm good for about 20 minutes on that, because I am filled with righteous indignation, and I have let loose a couple epithets that would make Rob proud of me.
That's a good way to look at it too. You always want to make sure if you're on a show and you're organizing what people talk about.
Sorry to interrupt, Josh, but I need to step out for a second.
No, all right, no worries, Randy. We'll jump on to the easy question while you run away.
Okay, do that.
But yeah, being able to respond to the needs of the guests, as well as hey, their actual opinions with your own, is always a good balance. So it's trying to find that. I have a few. Oops, sorry, I'm reading things, and that's where sometimes it's a response situation where it's like, for me, mild ADHD, it's not really an excuse, but for me, I saw lights, comments, let's read something.
Welcome to my world.
Instead of continuing with my train of thought, because I was like, oh yes, how can I help you? But that's a learned behavior from other things in my life. So thank you guys for explaining that, as far as like your personal opinions and everything else, and hey, how it affects your shows. The easy question, while Randy's away, I'm happy to read her question in just a second, but do you guys feel like intros become a comfort zone or a justification of the guests, in the sense of like, if somebody lists off every single thing that they've worked on, or if they oversell themselves? For example, if you're the editor, you go, I'm the chief editor, I'm a letterer, I'm a colorist, I'm a flattist, I'm a this, I'm a this, I'm a this, at a company. You can be like, I just work at this company and I have a lot of roles, or I have a lot of hats. Do you guys feel that it becomes too much of a filler in your shows, or do you find any way to like keep that short and brief, or mix it up whenever you're a guest on another show instead of a host?
Well, I'll say this as an award-winning comic book writer who is a host.
Oh yes,
and no,
I am too. I got one over here somewhere.
I'm an award-winning playwright.
Yeah, playing around aside, I tell my guests, keep it short. Don't do that, because the worst. And I do this with my panels, like in real life. On here, it's a little different. We can't really have a crowd in front of us. People ask questions, but you can't have a Q&A session like you do in real life. My panels a lot of times start with Q&A. Hey, you have a question, stand in the center, ask your question, we'll answer it right away. And I tell my guests, you have about 30 to 60 seconds before, like Josh says, my ADHD kicks in and I interrupt you. And I stop hearing about your career. You did 5 books for Marvel, then you worked for Marvel. You don't have to listen. You got, what's your favorite best-selling title and what's your new title? Those are what you mentioned. Forget the rest. if you can't do it quickly. And my intro to the shows, a lot of times you guys see, I don't even intro myself. I figure if they're on my page, they're listening to me, they're going to look me up. At the end, I say something quick. That's it. Done. I think that when you want to endear yourself to people, which is really what we're trying to do as guests, right? We're trying to endear ourselves. Less is more. Let them come. That's why my pitch is, hi, my name is Mr. Anderson. I am the underground indie advocating devil, great fetish monsters and more. How quick is that? I'm done. 20 seconds in. I've had people be like, oh, wow, that's it? Because they'll be, and sometimes as a host, you're sharing something or something like that. And you catch them off guard and they're like, oh, hold on. Tell us more, So what about you, Brian? I know you have a bunch of time to introduce yourself, and how do you handle that? Because, what is your promo?
Mine is, pretty just, like you said, not listing all my credits. I save that for when I'm applying for a writing gig. I come on, I tell them I'm an indie publisher. I am a freelance hybrid author, award-winning playwright, and former mortician's assistant. I look at that as my opening credits, like a TV show. And occasionally I do get somebody that comes on that maybe just sees, there's some guy in a fez. What's he doing on there? And that may be their first introduction to me. But yeah, and I've had to evolve that because I wanted to say something to just start the show and give it an anchor, basically, of familiarity to the audience, while at the same time listing what I do without me sounding like I'm trying to kiss my own butt. So,
and there's a really fine line when you're doing this kind of constant media attention. You have to approach every episode as like, hey, this might be their first episode,
right? Exactly.
This is so and so. This is so and so. This is so and so. And there's so many different ways that you can do this. With, like, for example, with YouTube, there are some shows and things where they have a cast. And they'll still sit there in the cast and they make sure that they introduce with their names. They're like, hey, Josh, hey, Rob, hey, Brian, how are you? I'm doing good. And then they'll cut scene and put text and the silly face or something like that. So it's always trying to find what that level for intros and things like that is. And it's like, look, this is what we are. And some days, I would argue that sometimes with these intros that it's kind of getting our brain to warm up and get ready to talk. We're like, hey, I'm so and so, and I've worked on yada 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 yada. You're right. There's always going to be a blend. Randy, welcome back, sir.
Yes.
In case you didn't hear, I will ask you this question as well, and then I hope I thought we had a question and see if we can respond to that for Meredith there. But the basic question is do you feel like intros become like a comfort zone, or they have too much filler? Or almost like a justification for guests, like in the sense of, do you feel like it takes up too much time? Do you feel like it gets repetitious at a certain point if a guest's been on 3 or 4 times in a week or 3 or 4 times in a month? Do you feel it better if they mix it up and make it short? Or do you prefer having them list all the big sizzle words? Like, I've worked for Marvel, I've worked for Star Wars, I worked for this,
I think that repetition can be a bad thing. Especially when you're introducing yourself. I try never to stick to a script. I know Varian has a script that he runs through constantly, and it's like, okay, But it's very important to introduce yourself at the start of the show, and we rarely miss that, but we do at times just forget because we're in the middle of a conversation when we hit the live button, and we're off and running. But I think it's important to introduce yourself, and it's important to list your credits. You don't have to sit there and name every publisher. If I were to name every publisher I've freelanced for in the past, we'd be here for half an hour probably. Because it's not really necessary. They need to know that you've got the cred, that you know what you're talking about, but they don't need to know every little tiny thing that you've done. That's not that important. So that's why I say, for example, I freelance for people. I've done everything in the alternate and independent comic market that you can do. I've retailed. I've done everything. Period. And if they don't believe me, then just keep listening, and you'll figure out that I know what I'm talking about. And,
So between all 3 of our host guests, it's fairly consistent. Yeah, I've had some very broad questions, but it's I guess we could all take away, and guys, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. being a host is finding the right balance and the right blend.
Exactly right.
It may be a very simple sentence, but it really is. It's practice. It's getting to know your guests, getting to know your audience, and getting to understand what you want to promote.
Yeah, I agree.
There we go. Sweet. All right. So, Rob, we had a message from Meredith or a comment. All right. So, from Miss Meredith Lurin, pardon me. I'm still trying to memorize how to say her last name. I've had a few stuttering stops with different shows. Even my latest needs a revamp because there are some things working and others that don't. I prefer interviews and no good at solo work like Brian K. Morris does every morning. Well, you know what? This actually brings up a good point. From a personal standpoint, I'll say this. One of the reasons I personally don't do a show is because I don't want to. I don't want to be the person in charge of a show. I'm not really a big fan of staring into a black hole and just be like, hey, how's it going, everybody? I'm here hoping you're watching this, high energy, or expressing myself or anything like that, hoping that somebody will come in and watch. For me, that's not what I want to do. I want to have some sort of connection. So being on a show as a guest for me is much more rewarding. I like being able to talk to people. I like having my little random rant like now. But at the same time, it's, again, finding that right blend. Like I will go and do a live stream, but I keep it under an hour. And that's me drawing, and I'll occasionally be listening to music or make random quotes from movies or whatever have you, because that's just my life. But, other than that, I keep my live stream straight and to the point. What are we doing? We're drawing. What are we doing? I'm doing a live sale. What are we doing? I'm telling you what the update is for commissions. Or, hey, I'm going to be on this show later today. Come on by. I have to do one later tonight because we're doing an art battle with IndieVolt, and I have no alcohol in the house, and that is my persona there. So I need to go and find a beer. But with you guys, how do you feel? Have you had any failed shows prior to these podcasts or these levels where you tried to work with other people and they just were never available? Or it just didn't click, or hey, the insulation wasn't there?
I'll start with this one. I still have shows that don't work, but mostly on a technical level, I'll say, because I'm in my fourth year of doing this, and so I have built up a clientele, if you will, of my audience that they come in and they know that 10 o'clock Brian's going to be on every morning right now until this C19 thing is done. But we'll still have a show a couple mornings a week after that. But so I don't have to worry about somebody not showing up. Now, I have tried to migrate a show over to my Rising Tide page, which is my professional page, and that didn't work out so well. But most of the time, if I have a horrible show, mostly because the people that tune in make comments that are just so awesome, that it's usually my internet going out or something wrong with my computers. It's always just something technical that is so far beyond my control that to me it constitutes not a perfect show.
How about you, Randy? Any failed attempts at podcasting or anything like that? Or for example,
Go ahead.
Perfect example. I apologize.
No problem.
You mentioned your YouTube channel quite a bit on IndieVolt, and I'll be honest, I'm a terrible friend or terrible live persona or whatever have you, because I've never gone and looked at it, because it's always something that I can forget about until you mention it.
Shame on you.
I know. I'm just being honest on the stream. Never heard it, never listened to any of your music. Jump off. Do you find that your audience crossbreeds over there, or do you do like your own just solo opinions, or do you do just art videos, or what's going on with that?
It doesn't transfer over there very often, and it's kind of I don't pay enough attention to my YouTube channel to really go out there and go, why aren't you watching this? It's great. Over on my Zim Geek channel, I do edited videos, but because I like dinking with the editing software. I'll slide a comic cover across, or cutting my my ums and ahs off. But the thing that I love about podcasting and doing these live streams is that you're live, and that you have to be live, and you have to have enough confidence and not think about or overthink things, especially when it comes to questions or people or situations. Meredith, in my opinion, might be overthinking things a little too much. You need to let your personality come out, let people know who you are, and then they will just, as long as you're friendly, they're going to naturally be attracted to you. And you're always going to have a dud show. Always. You're always
Yeah.
going to run into a clunker guest or somebody who's on there doesn't want to talk, or somebody who's irritating or says the wrong things. You do it and you learn from it, and you try not to do it again. That's the best thing you can do. Everything should be a learning experience. Plus,
absolutely.
If you're an artist and you're working in comics, you do your best work on deadline anyway. So, having that spontaneity, I think, is part of
I
the
have
fun.
12 hours to finish 5 pages.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sleeping.
So I ask Varian
not
never
gonna
to
happen.
read, never to set me up with a question. I don't want to know what the questions are in advance. I want to see what he throws up there on the screen, then try to read it. And I don't read it 100%, all the time. But and give an honest response to it, because that's the way it should go. People need to know who you are. Don't try to sell a false persona. Don't get up there and go, "Hey kids, today we're going to do this. Let's go." I do that every once in a while on my video shows because I think it's funny and it's fun. But other than that, especially when you're on live stream, people want to see you. They don't want to see the fake persona, or unless you're just so irritatingly goofy that you're a clown. So.
Randy, I'm still in the room, okay? Come
Are you pointing at my Viking Yoda? Is that what it is?
No, I was trying to get, I'm just
He is always watching over everything. He knows
I'm
all.
just lexic as shit. So every time I try to do something to point to someone, it's always like the wrong way. I was trying to point.
Yeah, you got to figure out.
We're
Yeah,
nerd.
you
all the time.
realize it's your opposite
up.
side, so yeah. Like I'm pointing at Randy.
Yeah.
This one's easy.
Damn it.
How about you, Rob? Any failed shows or failed attempts that with other people or just yourself before you figured out your branding?
I would have to say that, like Randy said, none of it was failure because it always helped me evolve into the next best show. And that's all it's been. Anything that we've left behind, we left behind because it wasn't working. We figured out how to make it work. And we gave it a new name because it works better this way. Same thing, like we recently got rid of the Indie Comics Report, which started on a radio program. The radio show, actually, the internet station actually shut down. So it wasn't that it was a failure, but I didn't want to lose it. So we brought it on to the real world. And at the same time, both shows were running. But then that one show disappeared and it said only indie. And right now, let's be honest, comics are in trouble. Comics need love. We need to stop putting up the barriers of just indie.
No.
And he's like, la 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 la.
No, I'm trying to
Thank you.
refit my headphones because I jerked my head too fast. I broke them the other day, a couple of weeks ago. So I
I
have to
thought you were in
tuck them under my
denial.
teeth. I am in denial. Comics are not in trouble.
But no, comics, we have to come together as a group, and putting up words like indie.
The direct market is in trouble.
I think all of it in general is because there's not enough passionate people now. And I think we need to highlight the passionate people, and that's what my job is right now with every show I'm doing. How can we put love back into comics and show how powerful comics are? I don't care if you're Comicsgate. I don't care if you're Gate Comics. I don't care if you're a gatekeeper or you don't like gates. As long as you're cool and you have an interesting thing to say, I'll come on board. And Randy saw I stood up to a bunch of people who were talking about hate. And guess what? They weren't Comicsgater. They were people against Comicsgate, allowing people to attack me because I said I won't draw lines and I won't shut myself off from anyone. As long as they're not spewing hate, they're good for me. And what did they do? They spewed hate on me. To prove
I think the irony is whenever anybody goes, well, we're going to form our own club, or they all, I was focusing on a word, insulation. They insulate themselves around people with like-minded opinions and things like that. They create their own sect and they create their own hate together as a unified group. And it's just one of those weird things that you think about. Now, the last question I have, and I suppose we'll pop it over to Rob or, keep it more open for him. It's a little bit more on a personal note. So I had mentioned for me, I don't like staring into the void of a black camera. I am what has been, to use some wonderful terms, a high-functioning introvert. Because of what I do and because I used to be on the road every single weekend, I would expel so much energy just trying to introduce myself to hundreds, possibly thousands of people every weekend. It's not a flattering situation. It's just what it was. And so I've gotten used to that. And transitioning into the mode of staring into a screen or staring into a lens, I just feel like I'm putting energy into nothing. and that's a really rough, hard habit for me. That's why I like being able to just do a stream or have it so like here's the camera to the side and you can look at what I'm drawing and not just focus on me. So from you guys, how much do you feel that your personal life issues between family and children and hey, I got to go finish my taxes or my car broke down, how much does your personal life affect your energy levels when you're actually engaging and discussing things with people as a host?
I'll start. In my case, it doesn't really do that. I've mentioned on my shows many times, I will wake up and I'm like, oh God, do I have to do it again? Oh, I don't want to do it. I did it yesterday. And, it's tough getting that energy going. But once I get that countdown and I start pushing all the buttons, I get this rush of adrenaline that and then I'm kind of introverted too. A lot of creative types are, but I have this thing called me, but not me. And it's the character, it is a character because we all wear different masks in front of other people. You don't always give the same impression of yourself to someone, say, that you've known for 20 years as opposed to, say, when you go to the 9 to 5. That you let people see different parts of your personality. And I'm like, this is me, except for the part that, cries when he reads something beautiful in a book. The person who's worried that, his brake lights aren't working on one of his cars, that sort of thing. Or all my shows have dried up till May, blah, blah, blah.
So do you feel like it's a subconscious reaction for your show Sona to emerge? Like because you're doing your show, do you feel like that is what brings that chemical reaction in your brain? You're like, oh, hey, I'm supposed to be this person. And so you instinctually reflect to what happened before.
Yeah, that's a very good analogy for it. Like I feel this rush of adrenaline and then I get just into the moment. And,
I feel like a lot of people don't realize that hosting a show or being a guest on a show, it's in itself is a draining situation. Like Randy and I both have this really bad habit where we'll work while we're on a show. And sometimes we can get lost in our work, but that's sometimes all we can do is because we've got work to do. We got to get this project done and we can be here and we can listen and fulfill that obligation. But at the same time, it's not our focus.
Right. And I'm a writer. What am I going to do? Diagram a sentence?
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is for your case, you're expanding and you're creating, you're reflecting on your fans engaging. But getting back to the question, you don't ever feel you're able to separate your personal life is what you're saying completely. So
I can. I'm schizophrenic.
If your car, well, there's a fine level of schizophrenia.
I make it work.
An actor has to be in some level, a salesman has to be in some level. There's always going to be, finding that balance. So your technique is that you separate yourself from it. And kind of trick your own brain into going, hey, I'm back in, this is who I am. And then I'm assuming if you're rolling the introvert level is that you go and recharge afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
Like you spend 2 or 3 hours going, I'm going to go read a book or I'm going to go and distract myself from whatever my next project is.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's a good way to say it because I experience, like I said, when I get the countdown, the adrenaline energy goes up. But right after I go off the air, I experience kind of like an adrenaline dump that all the energy just kind of drains out of me. And I'm, like you said, I have to recharge somehow. Although the very act of broadcasting, because I have this back and forth with my audience, that recharges me in a lot of ways. So it is kind of a balance, like you said, but it's up to anyone who does one of these shows to find what that balance is. And I tell people that, here I am with my hands, like we were talking earlier, that you don't have to look like you're trying to wave in an airplane for landing. You just have to find your own, like that. You just have to find basically your own voice, and screwing up, like I said earlier, is a great way to do that. I don't really feel like I hit my stride till I started my second year doing this. Before, but again, like Rob, I was looking at what I was doing, listening to myself and figuring out what I need to do this better if I'm going to continue doing this, because otherwise it takes up a lot of my time and a great deal of my energy that could be used doing something else.
I know the first couple of weeks I was trying to experiment with this between doing Indie Volt and Indie Advocate and things like that while doing my own streams. I was probably about a dozen plus streams a week, and that was just exhausting. I could not find a way to recharge, especially with the isolation and whatnot. But
Right.
Randy, do you, aside from a perfect example earlier, hey, some stuff happened and you're a little running behind. Do you ever feel your personal life can impact how you're going to be reacting? For example, like what I was saying before with work, do you find like that is it going to impact your ability to host?
No, because if the work is really overbearing, I'm just not on. I'm not really a host either. I'm a co-host. Varian's really in the driver's seat most of the time, unless his computer goes out. But for me, again, it's just a regular conversation, and we're talking about stuff that I love. So we come on here and talk comics. No problem. What do you want to know? I'll I got stories. Whatever you want to hear. My setup here is I'm set up in my basement. I'm looking directly at a Wacom Cintiq tablet. That's why I'm looking
while working,
because I'm looking at you while I'm talking, but the camera is up above, and very rarely do I look at the camera. You can see the reflection in my glasses, so I try not to let that happen. But unless I'm like going, what the fuck,
Yeah, right.
Or
like an actual emotional physical response. Like, no, this cannot happen.
Camera, like, I can't believe that guy just said that.
What do you mean he ran off with $160,000?
But most of the time, it's on the live stream. Yeah, exactly. Most of the time on the live stream, it's real life for me. I'm just talking to buddies. I'm
so for you, friends, it's a conversation.
Fellow
so there's
comic
not
lovers
so much a Sona. There's anything like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
When I shut the camera off and have to run, the wife is camera shy. She doesn't like being on in front of people that she doesn't know, or if she needs me and I have to shut things off, or I try not to cough or sneeze or whatever in front of a real sensitive microphone. So I'll shut the mic off or the camera off and go do what I need to and then come back. But I love doing this. That's why it's so much fun and why I'm around all the time. So
awesome. Well, thank you. And last but certainly not least, Rob. Do you find that your personal life, the children, and life, adventures, flooding, whatever have you may happen? Do you find that it impacts any of your time, or like, hey, how you choose to start a show, or how long it takes to ramp up, or anything like that? Do you find that your real life and emotional life affect or impact how you decide to host a show?
Of course it does, and that's just having to be human. But the thing is, you can use it. I went through a divorce, and by the time I announced it, I was announcing it at the very end of my divorce, and people were like, how long have you been getting divorced? Usually it takes a year. I was like, yeah, it's a year. I never talked about it. I really didn't tell people publicly about it because I didn't talk about it, but I used some of that energy to do shows when I wanted to be angry. Because I'm Irish. We're taught to hide our emotions inside until we need them. So when I needed to be angry at a moment and people felt that passion that was from that anger moment, when I'm passionate about comics, it's because I love comics. And all I have to do is remind myself I love my comics. My son's always around. And, I saw on CNN the guy who had the kid come in the middle of the interview and be all ashamed by it. No, my son is involved in it. Yeah, I'll tell him to shut up when he's getting loud. I'll mute myself and be like, boy, I will kill you if you don't be quiet. I try to do that because I don't want the hosts or my guests to feel like he's taking up too much of the show. But life happens. I won't apologize for it, but I won't take it out on my audience, and I won't take it out on my guests. But when someone says something dumb and they get the rage of the devil, yeah, that's human life in me. And they raise their hand, and they're the ones going to take the beating today. And in reverse, when a person is being very passionate about what they're creating, I feel for them because I open up my heart and I feel it, and I let this Jax gets wild. I let my voice sound passionate because it's true. Because in the end of the day, I'm not full of shit. This is who I am with the volume turned up for you people. And Josh, you're right. This is draining. I'm exhausted. I have been doing this straight now. 43 days. I have been on it.
You've been doing this
3 days.
Minimum 2 a day, plus your own personal mini vlogs.
Yeah, and it's definitely tiring, but I remember that there are people out there that are scared and people that need something to do. And I'm that reminder that life is going to continue and we're going to get through this together. So every day we get together and we talk about things that matter. Jaxie, as he acts up. Just now, he heard his name. He's like, "Oh, I'm like Beetlejuice. You only have to say it once, and now I'm crazy." But you use life. You
I think it's a really good, candid example.
Yeah, you use what you can, and you love life, and you love every minute you get with it. And you can either be pissed off all day, or you could use it to do something positive, and that's what I do with advocating.
Very true.
Awesome. Well, guys, that pretty much covers all the questions that I had. I appreciate you expressing all your thoughts and coming on. Looks like we got a question from Carl Witzman, or a comment. Let's see. I'm doing a couple of sentences ahead here. But Carl says, when I did my show solo, it was stilted because I did it like stand-up. And without a live audience, it was horrible. Got my wife involved as a guest, and it took off. And I think that's one of those things where Randy and Brian and Rob have all pretty much touched on this. Even I have. It's a conversation. Yes, we may have a way that we decide to talk or, express ourselves physically. But at the same time, that's going to be something that we develop over time. And when we have a conversation with someone, it's less thought out. At least that's my own take on that.
You get the raw reaction, and that's what people tune in for. People don't want to hear that pre-taped nonsense. And you get that, it's back to that interview I was talking about earlier, where the host was answering for the guests, so the guests just got to look and be, oh yeah, definitely, it's hard to be me. And it felt so canned, so ungenuine that you literally had to run to the bathroom and take a shit because it annoyed the shit out of you listening to it. And you want that. You want that honest, instant, you're on a show with someone and they say something about your comic and you're like, what did you just say, you bitch? That's the minute that people tune in for because it's honest and it's brutal, and that's what we are as humans. And sometimes it's not a bad moment. Sometimes it's like, I really love that. That's great. I love comics. Sometimes it's you strangling a kid on live Facebook Live because he won't stop. It's just that stuff. And we also have something for Meredith.
Hey, here we go. Meredith, the thing that drives me crazy is when I see hosts that my screen goes black, and see hosts who invite guests and don't give them time to talk. It's okay to stop them if they're going off the rails and ask them the question, then shut the hell up. Keep notes during the conversation as you can redirect. So you can redirect. I apologize.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good way to look at it. I would argue using Rob's perfect example. There's a lot of these. Even Family Guy has made jokes about that. Like, hey, this is my forehead, my show. Things like that. And be like, yeah, you're right. You may be the host, but it's a different level. If you're doing if the show's called the John Oliver Show or the Rob Anderson Show or the Randy's Show or the Brian Show, then yeah, you may be the figurehead in that case. But if it's like, hey, coffee with Ken, or something like that, coffee and if you keep it to just coffee and comics, you're going to be drinking coffee and talking comics. Maybe throw in a plug for some coffee, telling my husband to be on standby. Yeah, get on the stream. Get on your phone. What are you doing? I'm trying to watch the sports ball. Leave me alone. Trying to fix the washing machine. No, bad stereotype. I apologize. But yeah, it's having a conversation definitely makes the podcast a different form of entertainment. And I think as we continue to evolve,
I'm starting up is going to be coffee and comics.
I'm okay with that. I'm down as long as it's not at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm a night person.
9 o'clock every morning.
That's what my show is all about. Me drinking coffee for 2 hours. That's right. Hey, you get points if you know where it's from.
Well, I gotta show Brian this real quick.
I evolved the internet, and Indie Vault has proved that.
Oh yeah!
I got the whole set.
Oh yeah!
With the minus the chimp for the 18-point articulations, whatever.
Oh yeah, that's sweet.
Yeah, I got all of them. They're hiding over here on my other table. But I digress.
Nice.
I thought I saw it earlier and it kind of clued in, but once I had caffeine, it was like, all right. Well, guys, that was all the questions I had, and thank you very much. I appreciate having the opportunity to guest host. Brought to you by Coca-Cola.
This is my true guest host. This is that and crystal meth, but it's harder to get crystal meth during quarantine.
Just use bath salts like all the cheap people.
Yeah, you gotta make your own.
Look, man, sometimes I gotta really, really smell things. Like in the head. Everybody remember the early 2000s when everybody was like, we're going to smoke incense because it's like marijuana. No, bad. Shame on all of you. Don't do that. Kids, if you're listening to this, first off, talk to your parents and have them call us. Second off, don't smoke incense.
And for those who heard that bleach can cure you, It's a cure, but it's not a cure for you. It's our cure of you if you drink bleach. I want you to understand that. You're curing us of having to deal with someone who thinks drinking bleach is a good fucking idea.
Darwinism is a hell of a drug.
I know.
Yeah. Charles has stopped whirling in his grave right now and is going, see?
Bottoms up, motherfuckers.
Belly up to the bar.
Just like that Tide Pod challenge. Do it.
Well, that's what you wash the Tide Pods down with, I found out. So
Probably.
All right. So thank you all for being here. Josh, you did a great job being a co-host.
Very good job. Good
Randy, Brian, super awesome guest as always.
Thank you.
Thank you.
An awesome
Thank you.
con experience. I hope you guys are excited. Believe it or not, we've gone over 35 of these panels now. We've done 35. That means you have one panel a day every month from now on, and you're good. Just keep repeating, reuse, and rinse. We're going to keep going until they let us out of the fucking houses again.
Hey, I can finally get my lawn mowed.
Ooh,
They're
As
allowing,
long as
they're
you wear a
actually allowing,
mask, 'cause
they're
you're in
actually
public.
allowing landscapers now. So
ooh.
Oh,
They've
cool.
been
Just came
allowing
through today.
landscapers in Texas since this was mandated, and I was like, "How is that an essential service?"
well, you're
I
not
want
in
gyms
Michigan.
to reopen. God, let Jim
Right? I can't use my gym, but they can sit there with a leaf blower at 8:30 in the freaking morning and wake me up. Sorry.
You gotta do
Personal opinion affecting your life.
Yeah. Now you know, Josh. Now you know.
Oh, I've always known. That's why I don't host one of these.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
I know what I do
grinds my
anyway.
gears.
The
Grinds my
conversation,
gears. But
the conversation will continue, but without you guys, we're heading to the back room. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
take care. Stay healthy. Thanks for being
Take
here.
care.